Okay guys, I wanted to kind of build upon the videos I've done recently about the figure 8 stitch, and this time I want to showcase how to work 2 strands of yarn at the same time to create a design, more of a design in your project, and not just, we'll say, one stripe. As you can tell with this scarf I have over here, I've done videos to show you how to do the figure 8 and how to change it just to be able to do one solid color, but I want to show you how to kind of play around with it and create more of a design through it by using 2 strands. So we're going to do our slip knot, and we're going to do our figure 8 stitch. I'm not going to put on as many rows as I normally, or pegs as I do. Drop that in there. Place it on there. Give it a little tug to make sure it's secure. Okay, and then we're going to do our figure 8 stitch. This is just a review for people that don't know what the figure 8 stitch is. Okay. We're just going to do a few rows. We're not going to worry about doing as many rows as I normally do. Okay, so we're just going to do that many, and we're going to work our way back to lock this in place. And what you should be able to see when you're doing the figure 8 stitch is that it lines up to the way you did it just before. And then go ahead and knit over. This is just a review part of the figure 8 stitch for those that didn't see the other video. If you want a video that's more specific to just the figure 8 stitch, go ahead and check on my YouTube channel for the one I just did about probably a week or so ago. Okay. I'm going to do one more time down through before I start showing you how you can kind of play around with color. So we're going to go back through, we're going to do the figure 8 stitch one more time. Now keep in mind that first peg didn't, the first peg didn't get a loop on it because it had, it wasn't part of it going on the way back through. Okay, so go ahead and knit over, oops, make sure it doesn't come off. Okay, go ahead and knit over where there's 2. Okay, turn it for the other side. And again, normally I wouldn't be holding it like this, so of course it looks like I'm more awkward with it than I normally am, because I wouldn't be holding this way if I was actually looming myself. So we would knit the side over, and then we're going to push it down, and I'm going to show you how we're going to go right into using 2 strands at once. And it's a really, I think, a simple process. I'm surprised I haven't done this video before. I have done projects like this. Make sure that's knitted over. Last one. Give those a little push down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way back to the beginning, because I like, before I change colors, to be back at the starting point. It makes it a little easier for me. Okay. And this is a medium weight yarn. It's pretty much a red heart yarn that you normally would get. That'd be like a weight of 4. And I'm making sure that the other one I'm using is a weight of 4 as well. It's easier if all your yarn are the same weight when you're doing a project like this, when you're switching colors, because it's easier for them to hide in the project. And we're just going to basically build upon the last video I did when we did 1 strand of changing colors. It's almost it's the same concept, but now you get to paint more in a way with it. Okay. So I'm going to use a white, so we'll have a blue going and a white going. And we're just going to show you how to create a little design, and again, how to cast this off. And keep in mind with the figure 8 stitch that once it works its way through the loom at the bottom, you need to get your crochet hook and bind off those first few loops that come out. Again, go watch my video on the figure 8 stitch, and I show more about working that and how to bind off the first stitches that come out. So right now we're just going to work about color changes. So we've got our blue, but we want to add a white in. So I'm going to grab my white. And what we're going to actually do is pretty simple. We're just going to tie it into the project, similar to how we did before with just doing 1 strand. So we're going to come over a little bit, and you see how these are kind of in there. You can kind of go underneath the loop and bring it a little closer. You see how we kind of got these V's? We can actually bring a crochet hook through. So what we can do is we can bring our crochet hook in anywhere in the project, really. You just want to anchor it in. To come over to grab that, I just kind of folded the yarn in half just to give the crochet hook something to pull. Okay, and then we just do that, and now we just tie it to the project, trying to keep it as less of having tails as you can, so as small down as you can kind of go would be great. Just go ahead and tie it, and then you can kind of cut off the extra. So we're tying it into the project just like that, and it's a little more secure. And then you can take your scissors while you got it this big and cut the tail off that you don't need so much of. Okay, if it cooperates. I don't need that much of a tail. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to basically paint with the yarn now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to work both strands at once, mimicking where we want to do it. This should be able to tuck in and hide somewhat. If it does peek out at your project, well, I can actually trim it a little more. You should be able to kind of push it back into the project a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we've got our strand, our string, as you can tell, on there. Don't tug it too hard, but that's already on there. We have our little tail. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap with the blue until I get to where I want to wrap with the white. And I'm going to alternate the two strands going back and forth to create more of a pattern. So it can be whatever you want. I might, wherever you want to start. So let me, excuse me, stop here for a minute and come back, and we'll start with the painting of it. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to paint with it. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out, well, where do we want the white to be and where do we want the blue to be? Well, I'm going to start with my blue. So I'm going to do the first few rows just like I normally would. I'm going to go over to about here. Once I hit this point, I can actually knit these off to lock them in place so that I don't have to worry about them falling off. You can do the other side as well. And then now I'm like, okay, now I want to switch to the white. I want there to be some white design in it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick up where we would have to do, like where we would be normally wrapping with the blue coming over. We're going to skip that and grab the white and use the white to finish doing the figure 8 pattern. So I'm going to do that just because I want a little spot. I mean, it's just me showing you where you can kind of put it. So we're going to knit that over. And we're going to turn it to knit this side over. This just helps lock it in place as you're going. And now for the last stitch over here, I'm going to push this down and I'm going to work the blue. Kind of going, making sure the blue is in between here. And then I'm going to go over and I'm going to wrap. Now since this would have to come down, so you move that off to the side, you want this to come down to where that would have to go. Okay, you're basically finishing off your pattern going the other way. So we go ahead and we knit. We go ahead and we knit this off. So now what we do is we paint it a little bit. Now we have blue and white showcasing. Now we're going to work our way back, which means since I have to wrap that one down here, I'm only going to be wrapping one peg because I want to switch to blue, or switch to white. So we're going to go ahead and just wrap that one, knit it over, move this over to the side because you are going to be using it later, pick up your white, or your alternating color, and since this came down, it needs to, excuse me, it needs to go up to follow the same pattern. I'm just doing the spots where I did white. Lost my tool. Okay, and we knit those over. Just to help lock them in place. Again, making sure your other color is underneath and hiding in the project. You want to make sure that it's laying in the middle in here to hide it easier. If it accidentally goes outside the project, it won't hide in very well, and then your painting basically won't work. So again, this is supposed to come up. Well, we're going to leave that there and pick up our blue and move our white over just to make sure it's going to be hiding in there. We want it in this part of the project, and since the white is supposed to go up, we're going to make sure this goes up and then finishes off to the end. So you see how we're doing that? We're alternating what we do and making sure that if this strand was going to come up here, but we're switching colors, we're going to make sure the blue finishes off what that row would be like knitting. And you could decide to do this for as long as you want. I mean, you can change where it goes. As long as you do it in a way that's going to make it easy for you to switch back and forth. That's all that really matters. Okay, and now we're going to push this down. And it hasn't come through the project yet, so you haven't been able to see what we got going on yet, because it does take a little time. So let's go ahead, make sure I got extra yarn here. Let's go ahead and work our way back. Again, the same process. When you hit where the white would be, you're going to stop. And this you could change out quite a bit too. So now we're going to bring this back over, making sure it's in the middle of the project to hopefully hide it. Okay, and then we're going to realize that the blue, as we noticed, would come down. So we're going to put that in the middle again, and we're going to come down for the blue and do our painting. And what's cool about doing this, because you're doing, you're kind of painting with it, what you can do is you have two strands going at once. You can do the solid stripe back and forth, and I'll show you something in a minute with that. Push that down, and again, since this was going to come down, we're going to move this over, and we're going to grab our blue, excuse me, our blue, and finish up that row. Now the other cool thing, like I said, is you got both strands on this. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm thinking, well, maybe I want more white. So since you've already got the two strands on there, you can decide now that, wait a minute, I don't want this blue on the end anymore. Let's put more white on it. Move that over. See how I moved it over so it'll be in there? And now I'm going to take my white, oops, and I'm going to wrap the project all the way across. And I'll make sure that's the right way that I'm doing it here. So now we're going to work our way all the way back with the white. Okay. And this is where you can kind of have fun with it. You're just going to alternate back and forth, however you decide you want to design it, until you're ready to take it off. So see, we're just going through and we're just saying, okay, now we want all this to be white. Let's move this down, and let's do one more row of white across. Because if you're going to go back and forth, you can keep that other strand of yarn on there. It's when you're not going to keep going back and forth and alternating the two that you need to cut it off so that you can do that bigger, stripe. Okay, so that's all we do. We alternate where we wanted it. So it's whatever you want in the project, and you can do the same with your working yarn, the first one that's on there. The blue is my working yarn, the white is my alternate. So it's like you can do the same idea. You can decide, well, let's paint this way. Let's, you know, move it here, move it there. I mean, you can really play around with how you want the design to be. And I would only recommend, if you're a beginner, to only work with two strands. There are, I believe, projects you can do working 3 or 4 strands, especially if you're using all of one of the straight looms. But that could be a little confusing for a newcomer. So I would definitely say start with just 2 and practice. Once you get good at 2, then you can. It's a little easier to, to switch off and do more than 1. Okay, so we're just going to come back because I like to start at the starting point. Okay, let's get this off. Okay. And the biggest concern is like, well, when you have the 2 strands, how are we going to cut this off? Well, give me a second and I will show you how. How would we bind this off if we've got the 2 strands going at once? And by binding this off, you'll be able to kind of see a little bit of what we had did with the white, so you'll know what I'm talking about when I say, I call it kind of like painting with the project. Okay, so I did the white. Now, I want to use the blue again, so I'm going to bring that over. I'm going to make sure the white is kind of hidden in there so that it will hide in the project. But I want to use the blue. And what I'm going to do now is I'm getting ready to want to bind off. I've already done my project. I've alternated back and forth with the 2 different colors that I want to create whatever design that you want. And now you're thinking, well, how am I going to bind this off because I've got 2 strands going on? The simple project part is take your alternate yarn, which is my white, and tie it to your working yarn, which is the blue. So you're just going to create a snip, excuse me, of your white yarn, because I'm not using that one anymore. So we're done with that, and then we're just going to tie it to the blue. Again, as down as we can. And you can do like we did before with the crochet hooks to come over into the project more if you wanted before you tied it off. And then again, just cut your tail a little bit. And now continue working the project like you would normally do. So if this was supposed to go up, you're going to go up and work your way across. Because you want to make sure you lock it in with whatever color you want to end with. Okay? So whatever color you want to end with is what we're going to do now. So we're locking this in place by using our blue one more time. Okay. Push it down. Work your way back to the beginning row. Like I said, I like to work the top if I can. Okay, and we're going to lock this in. And then we're going to bind this off so you can see what the project looks like at the end. And we should see a spot where there's more white than blue because of where we used the blue. Or where we used the white, sorry. Okay. So now it's just time to bind this off like we did before. Which means I gotta find my crochet hook. Okay, so we will come back and bind that off in a few seconds. Okay, now we're gonna bind this off so you can see what the project looked like. And again, it's gonna be a little different the more you work with it. So we're gonna start down the bottom. You can use your loom pick if you need to take it off the pegs. Place it on a crochet hook. Go to the other side, grab that loop, put it on, and then take the back loop in front of the first loop, and then repeat that process working your way up the loom. So every time you have two loops on there, you're going to take the back one over the top. Give yourself room so that you can tell the difference between which one was the back and the front. See how this is sliding? Kind of maybe hold it in place with your finger as you put the next one on. Just so you don't accidentally grab the wrong one. Oops. Where'd it go? Ah, there it is. Okay, just lost that loop, so we gotta put it back on there. So you can see how little things can happen easy. Just take your time. There's no rush in loom knitting. I know we all see projects people do and we're wondering how they can do it so fast, but the thing is, you have to go at your own pace of how you can do it. There's some projects I do slower than other people, some projects I do faster than other people. It really just depends on my level of comfort doing it, so don't feel like you need to compare yourself to somebody else, that they can, you know, do that so fast. I need to be able to do it so fast. You don't. Just take your time. If it takes you, 20 minutes to cast off something simple, that's fine. You know, I've taken a long time to cast stuff off before because you don't want to get distracted. You want to just take your time and know that you're doing it the right way. There's no rush. Mistakes do happen, just take your time. And now we're on our last one over here. Okay. Now we need to cut a tail, which I gotta find where I put my scissors, of the blue yarn. So I just went over to the side and I cut a tail. Now as you can see, now it's gonna look different like when you're doing it a little more consistently, but so here we go. This is what we got. I mean, it doesn't look the greatest now, but if you look on one side, it looks better than the other side. But see, when we painted, we ended up with a little bit more white down here than over here. And again, it depends on the yarn. Like, this is not as soft of a yarn as I would like to use for like scarves or baby blankets. But it's just to show you that yes, you can kind of paint with the colors. And I probably should have did at least one more row to kind of help hide the white a little more up here. I don't know why this side looks so much different than the other side. We'll just squish it back together. But so I mean, just to show you that you can create a design just by changing where you position that. And again, remember, and I can show you right here, like this is what we casted off now. This is the beginning, and you see how loose that is? We don't want that like that. So when you have it either on the loom, when it first starts to peek through, you can bind it off then, or when you get it off like this. And all you would do is you try to find your beginning one, and you do the same process we kind of did over there, finding loops and just trying to bind them off. See, I'm just going through and I'm looking for another loop to bind off, just to keep the project as closely as I can. So I'm just kind of binding it off here. Until you get to the tail that we had at the beginning. Oops, this one's gonna fight me. Okay, and then you're just gonna work your tail in just like we did at the beginning. And get it a little tight. And see, now that side is bound off just like that. But that's all you're doing with painting. You're alternating when you decide to wrap so that you can have like this little design of however you see it. You may start wrapping just one peg and work your way to make it increase. Like, you know, I could do this if I wanted to do maybe a T in a project for somebody's letter initial. I could alternate the color to create like a T in the project for their name, or just maybe sprinkle it here and there so it's not as solid. You know, maybe I would alternate the rows a little easier. So, and as you can see on the side, it kind of shows which one you left off with, kind of thing. So I hope this helps, and have fun just playing around with it. You learn more by doing than just by watching. So, you know, just grab a loom and practice little swatches first. I wouldn't go right into a big project. I would just do up a little swatches to, you know, practice the technique, because the last thing you want to do is be like halfway through a scarf or something and kind of mess up, because then you'll feel like you have to frog the whole thing to get it back to where you want. So just practice first. I've done that before. I practice techniques just to make sure I'm comfortable doing it before I do a bigger project. So again, I hope this helps, and happy looming.